This isn't your soft launch. This is the hard launch, where we talk about what it takes to build love, businesses, and everything in between. Chris, it is so lovely to have you on the hard launch, and I'm so excited that we got in touch and that we're sitting down to chat. I can't wait to get into your background, your journey, all the things. So thank you so much for doing this. Let's get into it. Awesome. So I know you've been in the industry for 20 something years, and I am so curious. What was your career path before you got into the wedding space and started kind of in this industry? What was your life pre-weddings and pre-wedding industry?
That is the best question to start this with, because I had about 20 plus jobs before I started my own business. So I started working when I was 16 years old, and I never really picked a career path. So I always worked in business, usually for small business owners. And inevitably, back in those days, you didn't have trajectory for growth when you work for small businesses. So I would get to where I've learned everything I can learn, and it's going to be a long time before I can move up. And so I would move on. And it wasn't until so many years later when I started my own business that I realized it was the culmination of all those jobs and all that experience and all those skills that I learned along the way that set me up to be a perfect business owner for myself.
That's amazing. So you were always hustling in various types of businesses. What were those businesses? Like, what were you working in? I'm so curious.
Sure. So as a teenager, you can only imagine when your parents tell you have to go to work, there weren't so many jobs available to us. So I started in the supermarket, and the local flower shop was probably the very first time that I got to something related to events. And I did graduate high school and go off to college. And I was in Northeastern in Boston, and it was very cold for a born and raised Miami Floridian. So I came, and I remember I had to work. So when you have to work and you're in, your early 20s, you also want to have a social life. And it's really difficult to do all three: work, have a social life, and go to school. So I made the decision to not finish school in Boston. And I came back to Miami and went to work. My maiden name is Kraft. So Chris Kraft, like the boat. And I met somebody who had the local dealership here in Miami, and I went to work for him. And while I was working for him, he changed dealerships from Chris Craft to Bayliner. Bayliner was the largest boat manufacturer in the United States at that time. And we here in Miami have the Miami International Boat Show, which is the largest boat show in the world. And I somehow was tasked with producing that booth for my boss for that boat show. And so that was very much how I got into events without realizing it. And for a lot of the jobs that I had, there was some component of event planning in them. So when I was in my early 30s with three small children at home, and I hadn't worked for a few years, and I really decided I wanted to go back to work, I was looking for something to do that wouldn't require me having a boss and having those kind of hours where I couldn't be around for my kids. So I was at a beautiful home of a dear friend of mine here in Miami Beach, and it was her daughter's bat mitzvah. And it just was a hot mess. It was a hot mess. They were serving fish, and I could smell it from 100 yards away. It sprinkled. There was no tent over the dance floor for the kids. My friend in her gorgeous beaded designer gown was on the floor on her hands and knees with towels trying to wipe up.
No.
And I looked at my husband and I said, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to be an event planner.
Wow. What a moment. What an inflection point. And I think that you're probably not alone in feeling that, in that you had the experience as a guest and how bad things can go from a guest perspective and the experience that you're having. I mean, I'm sure it was also not great for the host, but that experience as a guest, I think just highlights also that, like, your guests are there having an experience, and they are coming and spending their time and investing like a day of their lives to like come celebrate with you, and they want it to be nice, and you want it to make it nice for them. And there's so many things where something can go wrong that you really have to think through the details. And so it's amazing that that was the inflection point for you that got you into the industry.
Right. And it's funny that you say that because I coined the term guest centricity or guest centric because it is so important, the guest experience to me and to everything we do here. And it
Yes.
also that I had no fear of taking on budgets and producing events because I also have a pretty strong background in nonprofits, and I had done quite a few events. Either I was on the committee or my husband and I were co-chairs. And, we were trying to build our businesses here in South Florida, where we're from. So we got very involved from a young age in professional groups and things like that. And I have a mother who would, tell me on Monday that on Saturday we were gonna have a party for 100 to 200 people, and I'd see her all week, but working like crazy to make it all happen, and then I'd see all these people show up and have an amazing time, and I was a very little girl back then, but I think that when I speak to a lot of people, they have beautiful homes, and they're afraid to have celebrations in their homes. So that's one thing that I didn't really have to deal with, and it helps me to understand our clients who do have those
That's
fears.
so interesting. I have so many questions from what you said, but first off, how did you know that you had sort of the creative element to plan and design? Because you're not just a planner, and you're designing beautiful experiences. So how did you know through that, through those early days, that that creative sort of side to you was there as well?
Very early on, when I got into the business, I realized that I needed to make a decision. I jumped into luxury from day one. That party that I told you about, when I made that realization, she became my first client actually after that. And I've done so
Wow.
things for her, and I thank her for the opportunity that she gave me, because it moved me right into luxury. So it's never that I didn't have to go up or anything, which was really great. But what I learned early on, working on site with so many vendors, is that there has to be a team leader. And if you're designer and you're putting the pillows on the sofas and setting the tables and doing all of those things, you're leaving all the other vendor client out in the cold. So I made a very early on decision that yes, I would design the guest experience, the overall, from the time they receive the save the date until the time that they leave after the long weekend or after the celebration. And I really realized this because I would work with a floral designer or a designer, and they would do it my way or they could do it their way. The price was still the same. So I thought to myself that I was not giving the best value to our clients if I was going to be the designer of what the room was gonna look like. We didn't have mood boards back then, but what colors we were gonna use, what flowers we were gonna use, So we start with the client, what's in their head. We develop the concept, if there's any themes or overarching things that we need to address. But really, I leave the actual design of the room to the person who I call the creative director. And I've taken some of the most talented people that I work with that do production and do design, and I've said to them, "You're not a florist, you're not an event production company, you are the creative designer," because we want cohesiveness all the way through. And so I want that designer to understand the full scope of everything so that we have that cohesiveness, and it's really was one of the smartest things I learned in my first year of business.
That's so true, and I think that just speaks to being able to know where your strength, what moves the needle, and where you need to kind of offload or delegate to be able to grow the business and scale the business, right? I think that was like an early way for you to kind of just scale the business and be able to kind of oversee things at a higher level if you're offloading or kind of delegating to a separate designer. You mentioned that you had no fear. I think that is so interesting because I think that's like a quality of so many entrepreneurs and founders that gets really overlooked. And I know this from my own experience that, when I started building and started jumping into the entrepreneurial kind of journey that I'm on, I truly had no fear as well. Like, And I still kind of think to myself, like, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, it doesn't work out. I'm going to figure out something else. But I think fear is something that stops so many people from getting started and like taking that first step. And so what do you think for you, like, was there ever even an inkling of, I don't know that I can take on this big of a production? Or was there anything that like you had to overcome, like thoughts like that you had to overcome? Or was it truly this like fearlessness? And where do you think that came from innately for you?
Right. So I think it comes innately from watching my parents and how they lived their lives. My father was in the music industry, my mother's an artist, and they just interpret all the time. They don't think so much about the long term down the road or the bigger picture, which is where I think I differentiate with them a little bit. Um, for me, fear of producing events after you start doing them and you've done enough and you've been in enough crazy situations, you know that if you plan the event really well and you plan for all the things that could potentially go wrong, then when something does go wrong, you have full capacity to deal with that because everything else is well thought and planned. But for me, where fear really came in is fear. Unconscious fear is what really held me back for the first 10 years of my business. So when I really made that shift and completely let go of the fear of investing in myself, fear of thinking
Mm,
bigger than what I had, when I let go of all of that, I cannot tell you how quickly abundance came into my business.
wow. How did you come to the realization that you needed to let go after those first 10 years? Because that's a long time. And what was the process of letting go? Did you kind of just wake up one day and say, I'm just going to let this go and just fully go all in? Or was there some sort of process that you went through to really kind of get to that spot?
True. There is a process. There was a process. So, first and foremost, I made the one mistake that I strongly tell everybody not to do. I started with no business plan and I grew an organic business just to get my life back, my professional life back, and not only be labeled as a parent or a mother, which I think, by the way, is ridiculous, but it's what was happening in in that time period. So I had so much business pain. My business pain was that I was working for, well, my number one pain that I didn't realize is that I didn't value enough what I did. So I was not charging properly for my services. And then I was working with all kinds of clients. They were running me left, right, all over the place. And of course, I could get everything done, but it's exhausting and it's no way to operate. And I knew that 5, 6 years into my business, I knew that. We had a little hiccup with the economy. So it slowed me down in those first 10 years. But coming out of that 2008, 9, 10 scenario, I was talking to everybody I knew in the industry, and I had started to meet people outside of the South Florida market. And everybody was telling me, well, I don't know what to say, but I think you should go to, get some business education. And there was a relatively new conference that I attended, and I went. So I went to the Engage conference. I knew about it for a few years, but I didn't they only had it a couple times a year, and I was busy working with clients in those times, and I finally had the opportunity to go, and if I tell you I went, it was June, it was the end of our season here in South Florida. I was so drained, I was so tired, I was so ready to get out of the business, and within the first 30 minutes that I was in the general session, I was completely rejuvenated. I found my people, I found my tribe. I had been to so many educations, but they weren't speaking luxury and they weren't speaking business. So I started writing everything down and listening to everything. And I remember thinking I couldn't even afford to go the first time. And that's why I talk about fear. And I didn't ask my husband and I didn't ask anybody. I said, I have a credit card. I'm just going to put it all on my Amex and I'll figure it out later. And that's not the way that I operate typically. So I really had to get out of my comfort zone. And what happened was I started to find all the answers. And it took me a few years to really move the needle in the way I of it, but I needed to absorb everything, and then I needed to create a plan, and I needed to set some goals for myself. And in fact, being here today, 12 years later, this is being on a podcast is probably one of the last things that was on my list of goals, because 10 years ago, there weren't that many podcasts. And I couldn't even imagine having a publicist or being on a podcast or sharing my knowledge with others. All I really wanted to do was fix my business so that I could go to work every day and feel happy and joyful doing what I do.
I think that's so amazing that you just booked the ticket, went to the conference. Like, I think, I'm a mom, I have two little kids, and I think there's something that shifts in you when you have kids and you go through this period of like, I think it's almost like you go into a phase of feeling more fear because now you have you have lives depending on you. You need to raise these lives. If you make a wrong misstep, then it impacts the whole family. But I think if you go through that but come out of it on the other side, oftentimes, or at least this is my experience, and it sounds like it was also yours, that you then come out on the other side suddenly realizing that you've kind of stopped living your life at its fullest potential. And there's so much that you can kind of still do, even though you are a mom. You can still go after your dreams. You can still go after your passions. You can still build businesses. But I think it takes some time. Like, that doesn't happen when you first have your first child. I think there's a shock that you go through. And then if you have multiple kids, like, that shock kind of sits with you until you kind of come out of that and realize, wait a minute, there's also like I have my dreams and hopes and aspirations in life that I need to be living. And it does the kids a disjustice if you're not doing that.
It's true. It's very, very true. And kids, kids and families and husbands and parents that are older and of so many things can complicate it. And the reality is there's only one pie. There's only one pie. So how we choose to slice and dice it, it's really our choice. And it changes too, right? So for me, setting goals and setting realistic goals and getting educated on the parts of running a business that I wasn't knowledgeable about, I think really matter. Like, nobody tells you, like, for me, I knew I needed to scale, period, end of story. This became not a one woman show anymore. I always had help, but I knew I needed to have people who worked with me full time. And I had no idea how to do that. And when you find out how to do that, I had so much fear about how I was going to afford to pay for it. And if I was going to triple my pricing because we clearly deserve it for the kind of service that we provide, was anybody going to hire me? So it was like one fear on top of another, on top of another. But when you invest in yourself, when I invested in myself, when I found really good coaches and experienced people who helped me see what needed to be done in order to get ahead. And when I trusted, more importantly, when I trusted what they told me, even though I had fear, even though I was very doubtful, I trusted that somebody who was a stranger would hire us to put on their, 6-figure wedding without ever knowing us. It happened. And I came from a word of mouth industry. So that was a whole nother story, that I built a business locally that really wasn't serving me. But I live in a destination capital of Miami in South Florida, where people from all over the world come to get married and to celebrate life. And I just didn't see it until I saw it. And once I saw it and my eyes opened, everything just started pouring in. It was really incredible.
I think that's amazing. And it sounds like you kind of went through the experience of building something organically with maybe less structure or like initial planning of how the business was going to go. And while that's good for some time, you have to kind of have the experience that you had where you take a step back, reassess, audit the business, audit yourself and how you're running the business, and start to really strategically think about the business in terms of scaling and growth and kind of the next phase of it. Because organically growing can only take you kind of so far, right? You have to really be able to think through it strategically.
No, it's true. That's why mentors and founders groups and things like that are so important for the people who maybe don't know yet, right? Like, I have a strong business background. So the only thing I knew is the whole event industry was messed up. It was not organized. It was not efficient. There were no processes or systems. So when I started creating systems and processes for my business, my second problem was that other businesses didn't operate that way. But that's what our clients, high touch clients, were looking for. I knew that years before it became a thing to know, right? And so having that knowledge that processes will allow you to scale and grow, and goals will allow you to grow and move the needle as well, is really what I wish that I knew from day one. And it's what I
Exactly.
strongly believe any founder has to think about. I mean, obviously today you can go to ChatGPT or whatever, and you can say, what are all the things I need to do to start this business? And it all is logical and makes sense. But I didn't have that at that time. So it was a much slower process. But I will say this, I thought I was going to get out of the business, and I was so rejuvenated that what I have built since then is like a dream. It's like a gift. It's like joy every day to work with the most incredible people and the most talented companies and the best clients. And that's what drove me. I was working for the wrong clients. And when I
That
found
is,
out, yeah.
yeah, that's so amazing. I think like you kind of found your way, right? You even mentioned like you found your tribe, you found the right clients, you found the right pricing, right? And it took you time to get there, like years, right? Like some people think this happens overnight, but it doesn't happen overnight. And I think when things click and start to feel right, like I think that's such an amazing kind of inflection point in a business. And it starts to not feel like, I'm assuming it doesn't feel like work for you anymore. It just feels like joy every day, like you mentioned.
It any business owner still has to run the business,
Sure.
and you know from being in this industry that it can cycle, and when it's raining, it's rain and pours, and like when it's droughty, it can be droughty sometimes, right? And I've learned so many more things along the way. You build one website and you think, great, this is great, everyone loves it, it's bringing people in, and 5 years later, it's not so great anymore. And so it's a constant reinvestment. It's a constant um it's for a business owner, it's a different set of things that we have to think about every day in addition to producing events, right? So I have a great team that produces most of does most of the day to day of producing our events. Even though I'm in the office every day, even though I have sold the event to that client, even though I'm there for all the important stuff, even though I'm there the night of their event, I am not sitting at my desk, which is what an event producer needs to do all day, just fielding calls and answering questions and setting up meetings and being on Zooms. It takes more to run a successful business today, to be the face of your company or the spokesperson for your company, or hire somebody that can do that for your company. It takes more to make sure that your marketing is constantly on point. We are going into another phase, I believe, in a small business industry of events where we are going to start targeting ads for who we want to attract, because the reality is they don't know how to find us. And that takes money and investment. And so you have to have a solid business to get there. And I'm just grateful, blessed, fortunate, and I'm just so thrilled to see where it takes us the next decade, so to speak.
That's amazing. I also want to double click on the pricing piece because you're giving such great advice, first of all, for really any business owners, not just business owners in the event or wedding space. But how did you think about pricing initially, and what then changed for you? And how did you understand truly what the value of your services were in order to bump that pricing up? Because I think with founders, first time founders, especially female founders, right? We oftentimes have the like automatic instinct of devaluing our services or devaluing the product, being scared to overprice. I don't know that a male founder goes through the same experience truly. And I'm so interested in how you kind of had that realization and came to truly what the value of your offerings were.
Yes, it's so crazy. So when I first got into business, I had no idea. I just decided what I thought my time was worth, which was a very big mistake. And as I got a little more experience, I checked out with what other people charged in my market. And I saw that we were all relatively the same. And we were all relatively single planners who were producing luxury events in the same hotels, in the same country clubs, in the same neighborhoods. And when I wanted to build a team, I said, well, this is net the math arc, right? So I had hired, after 3 years, I hired my first sales and marketing coach because I felt that that was one area that I could use some help in. And she said to me, it wasn't the first time I heard it. It wasn't the second, third, fourth, or fifth time I heard it, but I really heard it this time. She said, you need to triple your pricing. And that's when I realized that I didn't value what I did for our clients. So when I really looked at everything we did and all the number of hours and whatever, at a triple price, I wasn't going to be so upset anymore, right? I was partially upset because I wasn't earning money and I was working very, very, very hard and I was giving things away to make it look better so my photos would look better. The classic mistakes every planner across the country or world will make when they're building their career. But I don't know. I think pricing. So when I tripled my pricing, I also went to percentage. So I went to a minimum with a percentage. So that guaranteed that the number of events or number of clients that I would take on a year at the minimum would give me enough money to hire the team, pay all my bills, and pay myself a little bit of money, right? And I already had a team. I hired 2 people because when I went to hire somebody, I thought to myself, there's too much that I do that I don't know if one person can do it. So I split myself in half and everything that was creative, designer, computer generated, because I have a lot of skills, right? I hired one person for that. And then I hired somebody a little older, more mature, more my age that I thought could talk to our clients and service our clients. Because that was my biggest fear is that I serviced our clients at a very high touch level and who would be able to do that, right? So I hired 2 people and they're still with me today, by the way, 10 and 9 years later. So I
Wow,
feel
that's a
they're
testament to the team you've built.
correct. And they do the things that they do for our clients, they do better than I do. And I'm sure you've heard that once or twice before, but it's true. If you can hire, I learned by going to these conferences and education that 75% of what you do every day could be taught or trained to somebody else for them to do. And I was like, really? And as you know, we're all control freaks. So the number one thing we don't want to do is let go of anything, right? But I knew that in order to grow, I had to do that. And so w- the pricing that I went and that model that I went into, I still have until today, although it's probably 2 or 2.5 times what it was 10 or 12 years ago, right? And I'm not afraid. I speak to many people all the time that they don't want to pay for the quote unquote hired help, even though they have St. Regis or, all these luxury brands. And even though they're spending 6 figures for their decor, they want the one place that they think they can cut back on is their planner, the hired help. And I used to be really upset, especially when it was in my own community and neighborhood. And now I really don't care at all. This is what we do. This is who we do it for. This is what you can expect from us. And what happens is if you're into us, we're all talking. And if you're not, I will no longer talk to you for 3 months, right? Because that's what happens. People will linger and take as much of you as they can get until they drop off from you anyway. So pricing, I'm still one of the only people in the South Florida market that charges percentage with a minimum. My competitors now have raised their prices enough, so we do compete price-wise on the same level. We just have a little bit of a different approach, and even if they have a flat fee, they have all the add-ons after. So when you put it all together, it all washes the same anyway, which is perfect for me because we're not so much more expensive than anybody else. We just do it a little differently. So it works.
That's amazing. I think such a good lesson for any founder building a business, truly, because it is something that is so important. It also sets the tone of, in my opinion, right? Like what you value yourself as sets the tone of how customers see you in the market. And if you undervalue yourself, you're almost cheapening your brand by then giving off that perception to the market. And if you value yourself truly at the price that your services or the product should be at, then the market responds to that. And usually, if the value is there, like that is truly what they will pay for, and they will see that as like a luxury item, right? And I think like something else that you said was you had the ability to go straight into the luxury market, which is not what a
Mhm.
lot of kind of planners or vendors in this space have as their experiences starting out. What advice would you give them, whether pricing or something else, about how they can make that transition if they're maybe struggling to get to that next level?
I think that's a really great question, and I have had this conversation even with planner colleagues in the luxury sector who want to raise their pricing, right? And at a certain price point, they work all the time, they're turning business away, but they're seeing their competitors who are doing the exact same things as them for more money, right? And the most important thing about high touch clients or luxury is that it has to be across the board, right? So it starts with your Instagram and your website, and what's forward facing is what you're putting out there resonating with the types of clients you want to work with. So that's an investment right there. If you aren't raised in the world of luxury, or you're not accustomed to working with clients who live a luxurious lifestyle, you need some education. You need to like wrap your head around what it is that they look for, even generationally, what it is that resonates with them. And oftentimes we are not marketeers, right? So we might need to invest in some help for that to get where we need to go. So this one particular planner that I'm talking about, she said to me, Chris, I doubled my pricing and I put out 3 proposals and I didn't get a single one. And I'm not used to that. I'm used to putting out a proposal and most of the time I get it. And I said to her, "Well, what does your website look like? Did you redo it? What do you do? What is your proposal process? What is do you send a formal proposal? What does it look like?" So she had none of the accoutrements that comes with having a business that wants to sell at that level. And that is one of the most important things, that we understand what they're looking for. And it doesn't mean if you weren't in high touch or high luxury, it doesn't mean you can't go there because you have all the experience that you need, but you need to understand who your client is. And we all need to understand who our client is, right? And we have to have that avatar for the one, two, three, or four types of clients we want to work with. And that's also something I learned getting education at conferences, that not every wealthy person is the right fit client for us. So I've learned to identify the types of clients that are a right fit for me and the types of the clients that are not for me, but they're probably for somebody else. They're just not for me.
I think that's such a difficult skill to acquire, but such an important one because there is this level of like desperado, like I'm desperate for my first few clients, or I'm desperate to keep the business going. I want the proposals to go through. I want my product to sell or my services to sell. And so you kind of are just taking anything and everyone on. But you do have to be selective because that also sets the tone for your business in terms of what clients you're taking on and how you're identifying them and what that avatar actually looks like. And if you're able to kind of make that match really well, because not only does it set the tone for your business, but it also sets the tone for your success because you're probably able to serve a client that's a better match for you a lot better than a client that is maybe not a good fit for what you're serving.
And you're going
So
to
I
have a
think
lot
that's
more fun, right? You're going to have a lot more fun with the client that really thinks you're the greatest and you think they're the greatest. It's a win-win.
exactly. I think that's such important advice. What do you think are the like top few things that a luxury client is looking for, or like qualities or characteristics that you've noticed as a pattern with these high luxury clients or high net worth clients? What are they looking for, and kind of what are the few things about them that someone working with them should know?
Yes. So that's also another really great question. They do like service. They do like the fact that, for example, we have everybody on speed dial on our phones and our contacts, and we can get an answer way faster than they can. So they do appreciate not just the experience and the reputation, which I think are very, very important to a high touch client, but they appreciate the contacts that we have, especially coming to South Florida from all over the world where they don't know anybody. And they do want to hear your name a lot. So if they're doing their research or their team is doing the research for them in advance, they are happy when they're reaching out and doing some preliminary um, checking out venues or certain um, designers or whatever, and they're asking that question, who are the top planners in the market. So I think that's important. Your reputation's really, really important. um Flexibility, the not and I hear this all the time, and I'm certainly not knocking anybody who says my hours are 9 to 5, and if you call me at 7, I promise I'll get back to you at 9 a.m. the next day. So having a team, when you're by yourself, you have to do that. You can't be inundated day and night. You've got a baby here, you're trying to feed your parent, family and whatever. But um it works for us. Our team knows they don't have to respond to a client at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Most of them will anyway, but I'm always responsive. So it works for everybody, it works for all of us to that I like to say we're very accessible. I'm accessible 24/7 because we only work with maybe 10 clients a year. We're producing 30, 40 events for those 10 clients a year. So I find it's easier for me to be accessible because my team does most of the heavy lifting on a day-to-day basis, and I can be there for them. So it works for us.
Wait a minute. So you have 10 clients on average a year, but they're producing 30 to 40 events per year,
Well,
those
yeah,
10 clients. So that's
well, think about it for a second. If it's a weekend of events for 2 or 300 people, right? Um, we might do anywhere from 3 to as many as 7 events for that client over 3 to 5 day period. And then for other clients, we might only do 1 or 2 events for them over the weekend, right?
got
So
it.
that
So it's a multi-day event in terms of the event is one event, but there's multiple sort of sub events within
correct.
those
The
events.
client's
Got it.
one client, and a
Got
lot of
it.
we're known for and we love multi-day events and multi-day destination weekends. Whether it's corporate, whether it's a wedding, whether it's social celebration, there's a lot to see and do here in South Florida. So um, we, like I said, 7, 8 events in a weekend. I mean, for example, how would you do 7 or 8 events in a weekend? Well, one hotel has a basketball court, so they're having a basketball game, the guys, and then we're running a pool activities down by the pool and the beach. So that might be one day, right? Welcome party, maybe a more intimate dinner the night before for the family, and and the wedding party maybe. Sometimes we're doing the weddings on Sunday, so on Saturday, we can run them all over South Florida, maybe down to Wynwood or different areas where that are cool. Sometimes, it's trending right now that we're doing the wedding on Saturday, and on Sunday, we're having a beach party all day or a pool party all day. So, I think we very rarely do just one event for one client on the weekend.
That makes sense. I think that's a whole nother beast, though. Doing multiple day events is like you're coordinating and managing so 3 times, 4 times, 7 or 8 times the number of logistics. So it's amazing you guys are able to do that.
Absolutely.
With also what is a relatively lean team for something of the size that you're producing. How do you help clients budget? I'm curious how you guys, what the budgeting process is. I know these are, higher net worth individuals, you're planning luxury events, but I'm sure there is still some budgeting that happens and goes on. So I'm just curious what that process looks like. How do you help them budget? How do you set expectations of what things are going to cost, knowing kind of what they want and what they're expecting to get?
Oh, I think you're going to love this, and I think your listeners will too. This works for me. I'm not advocating this for everybody in their business, But remember, I said I wasn't a salesperson. And yet, when I gave away most of the day to day work, it left me, and obviously I knew I would have to do sales and marketing, but it left me as, the spokesperson and the front person for our company. And I had been working with a coach for a while, and everything was falling into place, and the team and the processes, and, everything was working except that. So I was like, how am I going to sell percentage with a minimum? I have to like own it, and it has to come across as like very normal. We do this every day. And it took me about 6 months to figure it out, but I got a little help on a jump start on my proposal from another planner who said, take it, run with it. And then I came up with the second half myself, which is this estimated range of cost that I do before we're hired. So I never want to be hired and have a money issue after. Those were pain points I had. I never want to have the client think that I'm taking advantage of them. And so for me, if I could do an estimated range of cost budget, and then I could put our fees in the bottom, and I could put our day of staffing fees in the bottom, because that's another thing that back in the day I had one fee for all. So by the time I paid everybody, I had no money left, right? I got this would work great. And then I said, let me not lock somebody in to a number. Let me create a range. And I knew what things cost. I've been doing this for a long time, right? So I have this template. It's fully itemized. It says everything that you might need, that I think you need in order for our team to successfully produce your event. And I give a range, and it's an educational tool. And every planner I know does that as soon as they're hired. But I thought, wow, it doesn't take us that long to do it. And how great if the client knows going in that we might earn 60, 70, $80,000 off of their event, and they're not going to be upset. And I don't have to have a money conversation 3 weeks before the event. Right. So I don't feel the need to put it into my contract, this estimate. I don't bind them to it. I might if I was doing 3, 4, $5 million events, but we're talking in the $1 million range and under, a little more, a little less, and maybe as low as 3, $400,000, because that's about the threshold of where it doesn't really make sense to hire us if they're not spending that kind of money, right? So it's an educational tool. Nobody else does it. Sometimes we don't get hired after I do it. I really don't care, because I'm not thinking about my competitors. I'm not thinking about anybody else other than what is the fastest way for the client and us to get to contract. And I will base it on the guest count and a venue, or the guest count and a certain type of a venue. So, because I know what things cost, right? And even though post-COVID, everything's gotten so expensive here in South Florida, and we don't know as quickly as we used to what things cost. Sometimes we got to make a few phone calls these days and say, what's your minimums and blah, blah, blah. But what I'm doing is showing our expertise before we've ever been hired. It takes us just a few hours to do these. I don't even do them myself anymore, which I did them for many years myself. And my producers do them, and it's just a win-win for everybody. It took all the pressure off.
I'm actually shocked that not everybody does this, because I think you're doing not only yourself and your business a favor, but also the client a favor. Like, why would anybody want to be surprised about these numbers 3 weeks before the event? And were you having money conversations 3 weeks before the event before you implemented this strategy?
I'll give you a perfect example. 3 weeks before, I'm, based in South Florida. A big portion of my business is large group, larger budget bar and bat mitzvahs. We have a big Jewish community here in South Florida. And I had a father. It was time to pay the final payment to the production company. And the work had been contracted months before. The wife had signed all the contracts, paid the deposits. And he called me up and he said, I absolutely am not paying $25,000 for that stage and that blah, blah, blah. And
No.
I had to play a little hardball back very nicely, very always professionally. And I had to say that I'm really sorry that he didn't see the numbers ahead of time. This has all been produced for months and months and months, and he's contractually obligated to these things. And if he really wants to cut back. Maybe we could find some other areas, but that he was going to get himself into an ugly situation with this company. And, we found a way to finagle a few things and lessen the load just a little bit of things that hadn't already been made. But I just looked at my team and I said, you know what? This is why some people put it into their contract. But even so, she could have signed the contract and he still was the money payer. So now what I do is I make sure that I know 100% who's paying if it's multiple people paying, and I make 100% sure that everybody has seen it and acknowledged it. And it is a jumping off point. I haven't been hired yet. So oftentimes, once we're hired, it will evolve, or they'll say, we're going to hire you, but we want to stay in the lower end. I hate the word low and high, but for me, low is the perfect Chris Weinberg Events event. And anything else is all of the crazy clients that I've had in my career that always spend more money. So, and that's why I went to percentage, by the way. I cannot tell you how many times I was tasked for a scope of work that doubled, tripled, or quadrupled. Everybody else got paid extra, but as a planner, I didn't have any recourse to go back for more money. So that was my catalyst for going to percentage with a minimum. And this estimated range of costs, I still don't know why nobody does it. I think it's going to change. I speak about it a lot, which brings me a summit. I don't know if you looked that up, but I would love to share a little bit about that with you before we finish.
Yes, please share about that. And I did see that you put that on. I believe it's annual. Is that right?
Well, it will be. We just finished our first inaugural.
That's
Uh,
amazing.
So I believe in transformation. I believe in paying it forward. And I know that my company wouldn't be so successful if we didn't partner with other companies that were willing to also grow and become more professional as well. So that doesn't happen. You can be the most talented, amazing creative or artist. But you still may not be successful because you don't have the processes that align with that high touch client. You can't get what they and we need in a timely manner. Nobody's asking for anything yesterday, but in a reasonable and timely manner, because it's just not how you've always operated from day one, and it's too much for you to change now. So we sometimes have gravitated away from certain creative partners that we love, by the way. But I cannot tell other people how to run their businesses, and I need um, to show our clients that we are very serious about what we do and that the companies that we work with are too. And one of the ways that you show that is by what they can see, right? And how quickly you respond and how you respond. So, the event summit for me was an idea that I had while I was sitting in one of those many, many conferences that I have attended and still attend until today, and recently had the opportunity to speak at, which was a big honor for me because it is paying it forward. Because I am one of those people that sits there and learns things that I might not have learned for a long time that help me become more successful, right? So here in South Florida, we had no community when I started 20 plus years ago, and we have developed a community. And a lot of us are attending conferences and getting business education and hiring coaches and hiring people to do our websites now and help us with our social media. And that's elevating the whole industry and our South Florida industry, which is great. But what about the newbies? What about the people that are just starting out, just a few years in business, right? I wanted them to have a place to come to as well. So I'm not a coach. I don't sell anything from the stage. My goal is to bring 100 people, maybe next year 150 people together for one full day of amazing education. And I chose this workbook format, which is something that I haven't experienced very often, maybe in some small little micro conferences. But what I love about it is that um, instead of hearing TED style talks over and over throughout the day and writing your notes or, typing them into your iPad or whatever, or your computer, you are literally doing the work. So every speaker that's on the stage has a program and they have a section in the workbook, and we are giving time in between for people to fill in their answers and their thoughts. And then when they leave, they take this whole workbook with them, and we encourage them to continue to do the work. It's
That's
beautiful.
amazing. First of all, I don't know if you know this about me, but before I started building Gia, I actually was building my own event planning company. And I did that with the intention to sort of live the planner and vendor side of the coin before building what is now a tech solution for this space. But this is something, the event summit is something that I wish I had when I was building my planning business, because I just felt like there was such a lack of resources all around in how to market, where to get leads, how to like stand up the business, what are the first like things that you need to be thinking about for your first production. Like there's just such a lack of resources. So the fact that you're doing this, I think, is amazing and so needed for the businesses just starting out, the people starting their businesses.
Well, it's really great. It was very well received. We gave a couple of spots away. We did a social media promo. We gave a couple of spots away to um, people who were like in tears that they had this opportunity 48 hours before to join us. A transformation is so important, and trust me, there were a lot of people that are in luxury or like higher end that came, and people flew in for this. I've cultivated a group of friends from all over, but the reality is that I think it will spread. And again, I know 100% for sure where I am today that Chris Weinberg Events is the business for me. It's the business that I build for myself and for South Florida, especially. Not that we don't travel outside, we do and we have and we will, but we really typically don't need to. And just bringing in education and not having it cost what I have to spend to go have that education when I go, is everything, because it gives
It's
somebody a
amazing.
chance to get started and a chance to see that if they put their fear aside, they don't have to make the hugest investment, but if they make one thing happen, it will happen. And the feedback's been amazing. And what we did is for day 2, we offered a half day mastermind. So I brought my sales and marketing coach, Erica Powell, who I adore, um, because she tells it like it is. And some of us need to hear it because we're business owners. We think we know everything, right? And we ran a half day little mastermind for about 10%, 15% of that 100 people that came day 1. And that went really well. I am talking to a lot of these people. They're in touch with me. I bump into them at networkers or different events. And they're like, the first thing I did right after I left was I bought a new piece of equipment and I raised my prices, so
That's amazing. I think you're giving the gift of being in the room with the right people, which is something you mentioned happened to you when you went to the Engage Summit, because it's like a magical feeling when you're surrounded by the right connections, the right people, the people that you can aspire to be like or get inspired by, right? Like that's what motivates and drives founders to be able to build businesses and go through the highs and lows of building a business, is having that community and being inspired by the right people. And I think you're giving the gift of creating that space for these folks who maybe don't have that already. And, I know from my experience as a first time founder, right? Like, when I am in the room with people that I aspire to be like or get inspired by, like that gives me the motivation to just like push through the next, whatever hurdles come my way and keep going. And I think it's so important to have that community and have that just space to be surrounded by the people that are in it with you and have either gone through it already or are in the process of going through it, and learning from them and being inspired by them. I think that's so amazing that you're creating that space.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah,
Truly. You have to
it's so
surround yourself with the people that you want to be like, or the people that are like, you have to find your tribe, whatever it is. There's no right or wrong.
exactly, exactly. I know we're almost at time, but I do have two more kind of big questions, but we can keep it short just to keep us within time. But you mentioned you have 3 kids, and I am so curious how you built your family alongside building what is a very successful business. What did that journey look like, and how did you manage kind of both sides of that and building in parallel?
Well, I want to be really transparent, especially for the listeners, because we're all different, right? My husband is the breadwinner of our company. So that afforded me the opportunity to not have to take certain clients or not have to make a certain amount of money every single year while I was building my business. So that not everybody has that. And we have to be really clear about that. So I think what that did for me is allow me maybe to move a little more quickly than maybe the next person, right? Um, for my kids, you know, what I know now in hindsight, I'm so grateful for. They saw two parents working hard to provide them with the lifestyle that we have. And they know that their mom did not have to work and chose to work. They also know that their mom started working when she was 15 or 16 years old because I had no choice, right? It also all of my kids have worked at different times in my business, whether they were drivers or whether they were on event staff or whether they ran my social media,
I
whatever.
love
So,
that.
right. So they all are, deeply invested in knowing what I do and who I do it for and, what makes it special. When I started, in the back of my mind, small grain of sand, I said, well, maybe I'll build something that they'll want one day, right? So as they were going into college and everything like that, I never said to them, this is a business for you. I said to them, go out, do what you want to do, go for your passion, go for your careers. And you never know. If I'm still doing this one day and life sometimes comes full circle, maybe you'll have an interest, right? So I have two daughters who are in their, later 20s. And it's conceivable that when I'm really starting to wind down, that they might have children and this business might look like something that works for them because they know about it and they know what it entails and what it takes. And we'll see. You never know. You never
I
know.
love that. You're building a legacy and your kids get to watch you do that. And the fact that they even have the option to jump into what is going to be a family business, right? Or what is a family business is amazing. And that's a privilege, I think, for them that a lot of people just don't have. Like they get to take on something that they watched you build. And that's just such a special thing.
Totally.
Yeah. So, okay, last question. How do you see tech impacting or having a role in sort of the evolution of weddings and events over the next maybe 5, 10 years?
So I'm a big mouthpiece for the things that I believe in. And since the day Chat GPT came out, I was a beta user in December, 2023 or something like that. I don't know. I have A types that work for me. They think they can write better than everybody else. They think they know better than everybody else. And I love that about them because usually they do. But what I noticed is that tech, for example, my most recent iteration of my website, instead of taking me like 6 weeks to write copy, it took me like 6 hours to edit my copy. And that is invaluable to a founder or a business owner, right? And I see now, 2 years into it, or about a year and a half into it, I see my A types. They're starting to use it. They don't use it the same way I use it, but they use it to get ahead. And I really, really appreciate that. So I keep saying, yes, tech is important. It's going to have a big impact on our industry. I think it's going to connect people faster. Like if somebody's looking for quality, they're going to be able to find quality faster. Or if somebody's looking for A, B, and C, they're going to be able to find A, B, and C faster. I think it's going to, when I got into the industry, nobody wanted to do renderings because when you get to the party and it doesn't look like the rendering, the client's super pissed off at you. That sort of mindset is shifted with the younger generations. They understand that these are just an idea, right? But I do think you're going to be able to, and we're doing it already, see, touch, and walk through your event in its entirety. Look up, look down, look left, look right. There are technology companies out there who are using AI. They're actually giving you post-event a headset with chapters where, unlike traditional videography, where it looks like you are on a Broadway show, the screen opens, you see the whole act, it closes. This is like you're on the stage. You can see the actor to your left and your right. So what I'm saying is I can look to the left and 3 years later, if I want, and remember what my mother was wearing, what she looked like on the dance floor. And for um, people pass, you know, we eventually, we all have lived our time on this, move on, but our children and our grandchildren and our future grandchildren are there, and this tech is going to preserve. Oh my God, I have chills. This tech is
I
going to
know, it's me
preserve.
too.
It's going to preserve in real time what it was like to be there. It's not just going to be a glimpse around the room. It's going to be like, oh my God, the DJ was in front of me. My mom was next to me. My best friend was on this side of me. And that's happening.
Yeah, and I think that's, like, why you fall in love with this space is because you're designing experiences that, like, are moments in time that people wanna just hold on to, and those memories are there's no price you can put on that. Like, I think about my own wedding, right? Like, if I could go back to that day and go back to that feeling, like, there's no price you can put on that, and, like, that's what you're creating for these people, and it's just so amazing.
That's
Okay,
what we
3
said.
rapid Oh,
I'm
sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
That's what we say, that thank you for entrusting us with your family's most precious memories, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, 3 rapid fire questions before we wrap up. How do you get inspiration for your designs, your productions? What inspires you the most?
My iPad? I'm just kidding. I live with my iPad. I wake up to it, I go to sleep to it. It works for me. I read everything. I'm an encyclopedia. I need to know what's trending, what's new, what's happening, what's hot, what's being done. Not to copy it, but stay ahead of it, right? So our clients hire us because we're staying ahead of trends. We're noticing them way before they're happening. And so that's really, really important. Um, just knowing what's ahead of us and being there and giving our clients something that they haven't seen or heard of yet. That's really helpful to winning new business from people who don't know you.
Absolutely. Okay, what's the craziest thing you've seen happen at one of your productions or that a bride has maybe asked you to do?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. Very, very funny. And I came prepared, by the way.
Good, I'm
Um,
glad. We love these stories. And
I
I'm sure you have a lot of good ones.
Yeah, but, I would say we had a couple, a very sophisticated, lovely, couple, same-sex couple, 2 gentlemen. They were from New York City. They had lived in New York City. They decided to move to South Florida, and subsequently, even though they had been together for many years, they decided they wanted to get married, but they didn't want a traditional wedding, so they said, "We're just gonna have a party and invite all of our friends to our club, and then there's not gonna be any ceremony space or anything like that, and then magically, we're just gonna ask everybody to come close, and we're gonna get married." And it was like, at first, we had to figure out how we were gonna do this and, like, whatever. So we just put a little, like, round stage, like, in the cocktail hour space, but it was off to the side. Nobody even knew it was there. People were so excited, talking, nothing else. It was a country club environment, and it was outside. It's not a country club, it was a beach club. But anyway, tears. Everybody was in tears. Nobody knew what to do about it. The couple was in tears. The officiant, their friend, was in tears. All the guests were in tears. It was great. And as you can imagine, the rest of the night was amazing. And we had a supper club environment. So there were so many things about that are not normal, that people had so much fun.
That's amazing. I feel like the more you think outside of the box of the traditions, the more creative you
For
can
the right
get and the
client.
experience
What do they
for the
say?
right
Right,
client, sure.
they say, like, trad wives, these traditional wives. We have traditional clients too, but I
That's
like the
true.
ones
That
who are.
is true. Trad wives, I love that. I've never heard that. That's
Look it
so
up. I
funny.
looked it up yesterday. I'm like, I'm tired of hearing this. Yes. Traditional godwife is a traditional stay-at-home mom who cooks and bakes and hello. It's not really reality.
Interesting.
Something interesting for the millennial and younger generations to
Oh my
ponder.
god, I've gotta keep up. Okay, well, what is last question, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to a founder building a business, and maybe it's specific to, like, a planner that is starting their business, but, it could also be broad to just any founder that's starting out?
To show you how serious I am about what I do and what I believe in. This is not something I researched this morning. I just wrote myself a note. And the answer is, don't get caught up in what other people are doing. Do you.
Mm,
Put your head down, put your blinders on. It's okay to
yes.
take a little peek every once in a while, but don't let it drive you because you know what you're doing. You're gonna get there. If you
I think
stop
that
and
is the best advice. And it is hard to do. It is very
very
hard to do because we are inundated with social media and all the things that you probably wake up to on your iPad and I also wake up to on my phone. Like there is constant information overload and a lot of that is competitive or a lot of that is things that feel like seeing people that maybe are ahead of you or got there faster or had their timelines, but you will have your timeline and you will get there. I think that's so true. And you have to put your blinders on if it means turning your phone off and like not looking at it for a
you
day.
have to. I
Do
don't
it.
look at social media. I do not look at social media. I probably look at my own Chris Weinberg Events social media maybe once a week. Maybe. I don't even know. I don't because I get caught in the trap and I go down the thing. And what I do like about it is I love to cheerlead and support and like and comment for my friends and colleagues and things like that. I think it's really important to support each other, but it's a time sucker. You go down the rabbit hole. I'd rather go down the rabbit hole in what are the new trends? What are the hot colors? What's coming ahead for us? You know, what are 12-year-olds into? What's alpha generation going to look like? Those things are way more important to me and excite me more than worrying about what other people do. I just don't have time for that.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Chris, this was such a pleasure. You are such a sharp business mind, which I love. And it was so wonderful chatting with you and getting just all your nuggets of wisdom. Thank you so much for coming on. And you are welcome back anytime. Maybe we'll do a part 2 to this because I feel like I could have asked you a million more questions. So
It
thank
would
you.
be
Thank you.
my honor and a privilege to come back anytime, and I can't thank you enough for having me on, and I'm gonna be watching you and all of
Thank
this
you.
AI and what you do as a founder. I look forward to connecting
Thank
again.
you. Last thing, Chris, tell everybody where we can find you. Give us your socials. I know you guys are all over, so tell everybody where they can
You
find
can
you.
find us at chrisweinbergevents.com. You can find us on Instagram also. And if you're interested in the Event Summit, you can find out all about the Event Summit. We haven't announced a new date yet. We're actively searching to complete that in the new year, but it's called theeventsummit.com. And there's also an Instagram for that as well.
Awesome. Go check Chris Weinberg Events out if you guys are planning an event or a wedding in Florida. But you guys do destination as well, right? You do all around
We'll go
the
anywhere,
United States.
but if you're specifically if you're coming to South Florida, the Caribbean, give us a call.